What is going on, everybody? Welcome to my Madden 20 franchise mode wish list. First things first, I just want to say we have very high expectations for our video games. Some complaints are justified. Sometimes we're just setting the bar a little too high though. And I know there are people in Orlando at EA working on this game that want the same things we do. But from my understanding, there are also realities about the time frame they have to work on this game and the resources they are given to produce the next title and politics. There's things we don't truly understand when we ask for things in Madden 20, so I do realize that stuff. And with that, we did actually see more attention to franchise mode in Madden 19 than it has previously received in many titles before, which is why I actually have hope. But all that being said, there are simply missing surface level elements to franchise mode that we are owed as customers. Like, just look at this Fallout 76 debacle. The fans are pissed off because the game didn't meet expectations, and it's getting all these terrible reviews. Well, just 2 weeks after launch, Bethesda, who makes the game, they're a company that shows they actually care about their brand and their customers. They're issuing personalized press releases, 50 gigabyte updates to their game, and explaining why certain features are not present in the game, why they couldn't do stuff, and then explaining features that are coming and that they hope to add. We get none of this with franchise mode. Just continued disappointment with the release of every monthly patch note that mentions tuning for cheesy multiplayer crap, new cleats, ultimate team editions. Nothing for franchise mode. So I just want to say that I'm doing this video as constructive feedback, and I don't mean any disrespect personally to any of the employees at EA. But I also want to make it abundantly clear that yet another Madden title without some of these most just basic corrections to franchise mode, it'd be simply embarrassing for EA the company. And you think I'm mad now? If things like contracts and regressions that we'll get into detail look the same in Madden 20 after we actually saw some improvements to franchise in Madden 19, the tone of this video's next year is going to drastically change, and it's in the wrong direction. But what I'm trying to accomplish with this video is to voice the opinions of many Madden fans that I've talked to, and myself as someone who spends almost every waking minute of my life either watching, analyzing, or talking about football, and provide tangible, frankly, incredibly simple changes to franchise mode that'll not just drastically improve your game, but improve the public perception of EA as a company for showing that they actually give a shit. And the last thing I want to stress before we dive in is how important franchise mode is to the majority of Madden fans, and I truly believe that EA, for whatever reason, has neglected us for far too long. The average NFL fan in 2018 is simply way smarter than EA gives credit. And for us, a significant chunk, if not a majority of your customer base, it's become insulting to keep putting out a game that simply has unrealistic contracts, nonsensical regression, a surface level XP system, and just a lack of overall depth to spice things up when you play different games with different teams and all this different stuff. And it's insulting because, yeah, let's be honest, we're gonna buy the game. And your bottom line, it's gonna be fine. No matter what you do, though, it could be better if you cared a little more. And maybe I'm an optimist, but the features I'm suggesting are not some glorified overhaul to the game. These are mostly perfectly reasonable expectations for a game studio that should have all of the resources in the world and some to apply to Madden 20. So EA, if you as a company want to continue to give us the middle finger as your fans, knowing we're going to buy the game because it's the NFL and video games and you've got the exclusive rights, then fine. But you too. And if that's the case, look, I've already chosen to not support EA for games like Battlefield and Star Wars Battlefront, who have alternatives in their genre, because yeah, I'm a little bitter. But I tell you what, man, if 2K ever gets NFL rights before EA starts caring about franchise mode, I'm telling you right now, this thing's gonna bite you in the ass harder than you could ever imagine when it comes to the NFL gaming market. And then to you guys, the fans, if you're a fan of franchise mode watching this video, I'll tell you right now, it's 2018. We've got Twitter. Get your phones out, let them know that you're pissed Tell them what you want, tell them what you expect, or just send them a link to this video. Their handle is @EA Madden NFL. And yeah, while I want you to like this video and comment, subscribe, blah, 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 it doesn't even compare to how bad I just want Madden 20 to not suck ass. So please, guys, speak up. So let's get into the good stuff here, and first off, I'm actually going to discuss what features EA got right in Madden 19, and while that might not seem juicy right now, a big problem in Madden's past has been removing the good stuff, taking two steps forward and one step back in a way, and that's really the last thing we need here. We got to keep moving forward. And then we're going to discuss the simple things that absolutely must get fixed, literally just simple little stuff that would make a monumental impact on how the franchise community would actually view EA's effort towards this game mode. And then lastly, we'll propose some new features. These will be things that would take more time to develop, but are really just substantial increases to immersiveness and enjoyment of franchise mode. And there won't be too many of those ideas in that third category because honestly, there's so many fundamental things that they need to fix on a surface level before they can, add the frosting on top of with some of these more creative ideas. Though I do believe everything I suggest in this video should honestly be possible to get done for Madden 20. I'm not really proposing any crazy changes here. I think this is all pretty reasonable. So first off, what did they get right and what can they not take out? And for me, and most of the people I talk to, I actually love this new progression system. It's a perfect balance of randomness, fun, but also, having the ability to grow players to be the type of player that you want to build for your team. But on top of that, this new archetype system is fantastic. And this was the big thing they added for franchise mode, and I love it. I think it's really good. Finding and developing players that fit certain schemes is consistent with the way real front offices operate, and I actually think they did a pretty good job of picking out certain archetypes for every position. And as far as the delivery and mechanics of how all this new stuff works, it's fine. So please, EA, do not spend valuable production time repainting how this stuff looks and making it look different, because I think it's fine. Now, I will say there's a few elements here that need to be fixed. Certain archetypes need balancing, including the speed rusher for defensive tackles is like crazy overpowered. You'll get a bunch of block shed and power rush moves and finesse moves and just everything in that one trait. There's really no reason to upgrade any other type of archetype for defensive tackles. So there's some tuning that needs to be done. And then I still find it actually kind of head scratching that you can't take a skill point and put it towards certain traits like bull rush or throws tight spiral or whatever, those side traits that aren't attributes. I find it kind of mind-numbing that you can't actually develop those things with skill points like you used to be able to. Like, there should be a way to implement that in a balanced and nice, cool way. And then I also think the Ultimate Team traits, those cool traits like Tackle Breaker, Ball Hawk, for those that have played Ultimate Team, there should be a way to implement those into franchise mode, because I think they're actually really cool. You could have that be something that true superstar players are able to get those traits, and you would have to have certain requirements that go hand in hand with what those perks really are. So like maybe a certain catching rating for Ball Hawk or whatever. You know what I'm saying. There should be an easy way to implement that stuff that would really add to the progression system. So I definitely think progression took the right step, but we'll talk about regression here in a second, which I think still needs a lot of work. And then the other thing I think they got right is improving the draft aesthetics as well as adding custom draft classes. I think they did a really good job adding that stuff in. I don't think they need to really look at the aesthetics of the draft anymore, and custom drafts are in. Don't take them out. The only thing is, now that the visuals have been upgraded, we need them to focus on fixing the classes themselves and how the draft actually works from a football point of view, not an aesthetic one. And this is a whole nother tangent I can go on about how unrealistic and unbalanced the auto-generated draft classes are and what EA can do to fix it. But I've actually already made a 40-minute video breaking all this down, which I will link in the description if you want to check that out. But, I love that we have custom draft classes now, and I'm happy that they added that feature. But I would love it if EA could tune whatever generates these rookies to create more realistic, usable classes, so I don't need to spend 10 plus hours as a community class creator, 10 plus hours just to make a single class with fake names that is actually usable in franchise mode. And if you don't know what I mean, well, just to point out some of the more glaring issues. Quarterbacks are just wildly rated too high, and they just take over all the existing players. The running backs are slow, unusable, and boring to use. The wideouts, for some reason, have an absurdly high run block rating, which makes running the ball unbalanced. O-linemen in general are ranked just preposterously high, and you get all of these incoming linemen just overtaking the existing guys because they're just for no reason rated way higher than the already existing players. We've got linebackers that have just unrealistic height and weight combinations. Like, you'll consistently get 5'11", 255-pound first-round linebackers. Like, that type of player doesn't exist. That's ridiculous. Linebackers are just too slow compared to real-life prospects. Cornerbacks are wildly unusable and unathletic as well. So there's a ton of problems with the players themselves, and then we need improved drafting and draft pick trade logic. I've seen a team draft a tight end second overall just because they didn't need a quarterback while there was a good quarterback available. Like, why is another team not trading up for that pick? Why does a team not recognize that you don't draft a tight end second overall? And if a team just took a top 10 quarterback the year before, they should be making moves to develop that player, not looking to replace that player because the computer determines that they need a quarterback. And often the quarterback they draft isn't even better than the guy they have. And then the value that teams place on their draft picks is just all over the damn place. Like, it shouldn't be that hard to create realistic values for these draft picks. And there's smart football heads in the building at EA. If they just put some time into addressing this stuff and rewrites the code of how this stuff works out, I'm sure it can absolutely be fixed in a more realistic manner, and it's something that really needs to be looked at. So let's stick on this tune of the basic things that are absolutely broken, that need to be fixed, and would be frankly deplorable if we have to go through another year without some of these things. And if they didn't add any other features after this second category of things that need to be fixed, if they didn't add anything else, then fine. But we at least need a statement, if they don't, of why they can't do this stuff, because there's literally no excuse at this point. So number one is contracts. And when I ask around the community, on Twitter or whatever, this is the buzzword that comes up, is contracts. And all the stuff that needs fixing is super simple. So let me lay it out. First things first, the amount of money that players ask for is simply broken. EA needs to look at the market in real life and recode what players ask for. Simple. In general, the problem here is stars don't ask for enough money, but there's also issues like lower level players would never agree to a 7-year league minimum salary. Like, they're just ruining their career by agreeing to that contract if they ever become a good player. And then in the last week of free agency, this kind of happens, but it should happen way more. Unwanted players that aren't getting contracts should be willing to sign these lowball contracts as opposed to like stubbornly sitting on the market waiting for a team to sign them on that whatever that stupid salary number that the game assigns them under EA's lazy during season free agent market. Like, if there's not a market for a player, they should agree to a contract offer for the one team that's willing to pay him $1 or $2 million at the end of free agency. And note that if this is fixed, computer teams also need to come in and offer these lowball offers that are less than what the player is actually asking for to reflect what the market looks like in real life. And for those that follow my TFGO Heavy Realism League, well, we actually have a chart that you are required to follow when you re-sign players because the values that they ask for are just unrealistic. So this creates, realistic team building and cap management. And honestly, if EA just took these values that we came up with and applied a simple code in a day, it would be a massive improvement to the contract system we have right now. And I'll link that chart in the description below. And then there's more things here. 5th-year options. Like, that's it. EA should be embarrassed that this is not a part of their game by now. First-round picks in real life get a 5th-year option. It's a massive added value in having a first-round player because it gives you an extra year of cheap control. Like, just add that. How hard is that to add? Honestly, it's been years. And fix how contracts get backloaded. Like, frankly, I don't even care if you add the option to structure the deal year by year, which you should. There's no reason you shouldn't be able to structure it year by year, decide to front load or back load. But right now, if I give a player a $16 million contract for, say, 6 years, it's going to be like 8 mil in the first year and then like 26 in the last year, which is just unmanageable and unrealistic. Like JJ Watt's cap hit in his final year in Madden 19 is like 29 mil. Like, what the hell is that? That's like double what it's going to be in real life. So just fix this stuff. It's a freaking joke. It's garbage. So that's got to be right at the top of the list. And then the other thing that needs to be seriously looked at is regression. And they've made some steps in the right direction with Madden 19 because it used to be even worse, but it's still got a long ways to go. Now, let me be clear, I'm for regression. It's a reality teams and players face in real life. Dude, you just can't be young forever. But EA seems to also neglect the fact that there's actually some players that can play well into their 30s. And regression is still way too harsh for players producing at a high level. You know, you could have a Pro Bowl season and then be unusable the next year. The regression should slow down if you're still producing at a high level. You know, I've had a 30-year-old Earl Thomas coming off a Pro Bowl season and a Super Bowl MVP lose 3 speed. A 34-year-old Trent Williams coming off a Pro Bowl season lose 7 pass block, among many other big trait drops. Like, I'm not saying you shouldn't regress, but it should slow down if they're actually playing at a high level. There are players that play into their mid-30s, and that's just impossible to have happen in Madden. So I don't need to go into heavy detail. The heads at EA can surely come up with something better than this, whether it's considering your development trait more for regression, lowering regression for Pro Bowl players, or simply adding a regression slider to just let the community figure it all out. But the current system ain't it. And possibly an even bigger issue than the current regression system is with this new organic development trait mechanic, where players will gain and lose development traits based on production. And let me be clear, I absolutely love this new mechanic. The dynamic progression trait system, it makes turning sleeper prospects into future stars possible, but it needs some serious tuning. I have consistently won Defensive Player of the Year with players and had them not gain but lose a development trait. I've had players with just quick development set new career highs in tackles and sacks but lose a development. Like, you should at least keep it if you're improving your production. But right now the system's just predicated on allowing a certain number of stars, superstars, or whatever at their position, which I guess makes sense to balance things out. But you also need to look at a player's history and what his own development has told you about how his expectations should have gone. You know, there's absolutely no reason also for like Russell Wilson to lose his superstar trait because 4 other quarterbacks threw for more yards. It just doesn't take enough into consideration, and it can really screw things up. And then my third big gripe, the thing that I want to be fixed so bad, and this one probably won't because not enough people think like this, but a big gripe I have is that this game still acts like it's 1990 in terms of distinguishing between interior defensive linemen, edge rushers, and off-ball linebackers. And while this concept may seem new or insignificant to some, well, the people that follow football closely refer to players as edge, interior line, and off-ball linebacker, as opposed to defensive tackle, defensive end, outside linebacker, and inside linebacker. And this may seem like a small issue to some, depending on how much football you know, but it actually leads to some major unimmersive problems with both player progression, as it determines Pro Bowls, XP, development trait changes, but it also drastically impacts realistic gameplay. So for one, like Von Miller and Bobby Wagner have no business being considered the same position when it comes to awards. And if only so many linebackers are going to get superstar, there is no reason that Von Miller should be able to take a superstar place from Bobby Wagner or Pro Bowl XP or whatever. But this also leads to massive gameplay issues. And whether you've realized this or not, we have all played that cheesy opponent who's going to line up Khalil Mack or whoever that freak edge rusher is as a defensive end in a 3-4 scheme. Well, for those that know football, an end in a 3-4 has almost no difference from a defensive tackle in a 4-3. They might be a touch smaller, but they're the same position especially when teams in real life are running 65% nickel packages on all plays. So when people play Khalil Mack as a 3-4 defensive end, he's going to line up as a one technique, a nose tackle in a base nickel package. And the problem here is Khalil Mack has a ridiculous block shed rating, rightfully so. He's a hell of a run defender on the edge, but you play that man on the inside getting double teamed. I realize he's a generational player, but if you line that dude up at nose tackle and ask him to defend the run, getting double teamed the same way a 310-pound defensive tackle is able to in real life, he's going to get eaten alive. But in Madden, Khalil Mack's going to serve as one of the best nose tackles in the entire game because of a few ratings. In general, this could be a whole nother spiel, but height and weight just do not matter in Madden the way that they should, because that is what most scouts look at first. So what we need is a size and trait requirement to be able to play certain positions according to scheme. And again, this position change requirement is something that we have in our TFGO league that you can actually look at in our rule book in the description. And you may be pointing to like the Calais Campbells of the world who are going to line up on the edge on rundowns and inside on passing downs. Well, you can implement a way pretty easily for edge guys to be able to play inside in those situations. You have like the 4D end package already in the game in that 4-3 scheme. But you should only be allowed to call this package in obvious passing situations, 3rd and long, or against appropriate offensive formations where they're putting 4 wide out on the field. But right now, it's a serious issue for people looking for realistic gameplay. And outside of franchise, this could actually be a great way to remove some of the many cheesy defenses we see in the competitive scene as well, that many people that want to get into and watch competitive Madden just get discouraged because it's just not real football. So it could actually improve the perception of the competitive scene as well. So those were the biggies. There's really those big 3: fixed contracts, regression, and the way the game basically registers defensive players. But then I have this list of, really minor tweaks that would make serious improvements to franchise mode. Stuff that honestly should be in these patch notes that they release every month, but they just continue to ignore franchise mode entirely. So, when a player comes back from injury, it shouldn't screw up your depth chart. I've had players lose their spots while simming because players come back from injury, and it goes unnoticed, and then they lose stats, and then I get all frustrated with where I'm at in the franchise. So fix that. For online leagues, if a player disconnects, and I don't know if there's a reason why you can't do this, I know NCAA used to have this, but if a player disconnects late in the game, the user should be given the option to continue versus the computer. This would be a simple change that is actually huge for leagues who play deep into fourth quarters of long quarters, who often experience lagouts, and when it happens, you're stuck wiping out all of the stats, having to do a forced win, you don't know who's going to get hurt, it's just a mess. So that would be awesome. Number 3, this one's super small, but would actually be a big change for me. Change the text of the coin toss menu from a meaningless directional error that I have no idea where the hell the wind is, to with wind or against wind. If I lose the toss in overtime, I shouldn't have to guess 50-50 again just to know if I'm getting the damn wind. And then number 4 here, in the transaction log, please add the ability for everyone to see what changes a commissioner makes to the ratings so that you know if a commissioner is cheating. I think my leagues, I'm good on that end, but I know that's a big request out there and it would be super easy to add. And then number 5, this one's definitely selfish, but I for lack of modesty, I do believe that my custom roster has made a good impact on this community. I've probably spent over 3,000 hours editing rosters over the last 2 seasons, so if EA could give me the ability to edit many of the missing features in those editing screens, such as contracts, every trait, like I don't know why I can't edit bull rush, but I can edit spin move, development traits I can't edit, being able to trade draft picks when trades go on in real life, that's missing. Also the ability to see a player's overall change inside the edit menu, so I don't have to back out to see it. The ability to edit a player's age. This would all be such a damn blessing to someone who spends so much time editing rosters, but maybe I'm just selfish there. So everything to this point have been major stressors, things that have to get fixed, and super basic stuff that it's just inexcusable that this stuff isn't updated to this point. But I do want to talk about some really fun features that would add immersion, keep franchise fresh, and every time you play it, it might feel a little different. But I also wanted to come up with some things that are doable on top of the stuff I've already requested. And you got to come up with some frosting to sell on the cover of the game so people feel like they're getting a new version. I understand that. So this was kind of my mind dump here. And I really just have two big ones here, which frankly is what we got this year. We got two big things, right? We got a kind of a draft overhaul, and then they added this archetype system. So fix some of the crap that's missing, and then add a couple simple features. So number one, and this is on top of everything, probably the biggest request in the community, and I feel like we might actually get this time, but we'll see. Number one is a completely overhauled coaching system. This includes two parts. Number one, a coaching carousel, like we used to have in NCAA, including offensive and defensive coordinators. And then number two is an RPG skill tree, like a Skyrim-style skill tree for head coaches and coordinators. Now, I understand there's issues with the coaching union, so they may have to include fake names for these coordinators, but from everyone I've talked to, they're fine with it. They just want coordinators. Or perhaps we can edit the names of these guys. I don't know. But just look at NCAA 14, basically copy and paste that system. And we need an update to the skills for coaches. Right now, no one gives a flying you-know-what about who your coach is after the first year, because there's like two skills that matter. Once you get your XP boost, honestly, you're good to go. And for these skills, just the more the merrier. I want skill trees for progression, regression, position-specific trait boosts, speed or other trait boosts on certain concepts like screens or verticals. A system that they've actually already kind of implemented with the weekly training. You get that kind of boost depending on what you want to focus on. That would play in perfectly with the scheme and archetype stuff that they've already got going. Give us every possible way you can think of to customize and grow your coach to your own play style so that it feels unique every time you start as a new coach. And then add stuff for coordinators. The ability to grow and develop your coordinators, and then you'll watch them leave and thrive elsewhere with what they learned under you with the same style. And vice versa, the ability to recruit from other programs and bring in guys that have their own skills. There's so much potential here. It's really not that much to ask for, in my opinion, but it would be a monumental increase to just the overall diversity of each franchise you play through. And then number two here is an off-season training program. And this is something that NBA 2K has. And this would actually implement super well with an upgraded coaching thing, because you could get more points to spend in your off-season training program depending on what your coach's level is, or maybe there were perks that allow you access to certain things in the training program, or become cheaper to spend on your off-season training. So the beauty of these things is they would work so organically together. It'd be so beautiful. So, what would you add to these? You would include things like the ability to raise injury for players, the ability to gain development for a year, to lose or gain weight for players. Sometimes you'll bring a guy into a new scheme and you should be able to say, all right, we're going to focus on you. I want you to gain 20 pounds. You're going to go from a 4-3 end to a 3-4 end. Maybe they would gain some strength, lose some speed and acceleration. Teach a player to have better kick returning. I want you to be a kick returner this year. Let's focus on your kick return, and then see a massive boost to his kick return trait. The ability to teach your quarterback to throw a tight spiral, to brace for big hits. Again, the more, the merrier. And number one and number two here between my off-season training program and an increased amount of skills for coaches and a coaching carousel, these could work so beautifully together. It wouldn't even take that much to draw all this up and implement it to the game. And I think that on top of my simple requests is really not that much to ask for the best franchise mode we've ever had. And I think you guys are going to agree. The last thing I'll mention here is something that I'm kind of thinking about more down the road, because I don't think they're ready for it for Madden 20. I need them to focus on the stuff we just talked about. But something to start thinking about maybe for future Maddens would be an improved system for how they evaluate player performance, which obviously has a big impact on how much XP you gain and how your players develop. But as an employee of PFF, I get very frustrated with the way this game evaluates performance and gives awards. It's very surface level. And basically what I'm talking about here down the road is adding more specific stats like pancakes for offensive line, or like a quarterback rating while under pressure, quarterback hurries for pass rushers, so not just looking at sacks but hurries. So whether it's just adding more stats that the game can record to monitor a player's performance, or adding an actual sophisticated system, maybe even partnering with Pro Football Focus to generate a game grade for a player's performance. And this would be so cool. It would be such a rewarding XP system, because you could take that 65 overall, and if he graded out as the second best running back in the league that year, he could get a massive boost. But right now, the game's just not ready for it. This is pretty big picture and something that I would just dream of down the road, but that would probably be my next big request after everything I've talked about, honestly. So again, folks, that's it. If you agree, do like the video, but also share your thoughts with EA. Hell, share this video with them on Twitter. I'm looking forward to hearing from you guys, hearing your thoughts in the comment section as well on what you guys want. But for now, cheers as always, and we'll see you next time. Peace out.